Welcome to this episode of the Cold Dead Hands podcast with your hosts, Dr. Benjamin Dowd-Arrow and resident firebrand Brett Cross. Sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy as they bring you the stories told from the cold dead hands.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Stories from the Cold Dead Hands, a radio show dedicated to uplifting the voices of those that we have lost, survivors of gun violence, in an effort to put the emphasis away from shooters and back onto those who were stolen from us. I'm Dr. Benjamin Dowd-Arrow. I'm an internationally recognized gun scholar, and having published multiple papers on things like the social determinants of guns, why do people own guns, why do they support certain policies, as well as the mental and physical well-being aspects of gun ownership. My co-host is Brett Cross. Brett?
Yeah, I'm Brett Cross. On May 24th, 2022, I lost my son Uzziah in the Robb Elementary School shooting. And since then, I have been fighting for safer gun laws, or better gun laws, I should say, and to keep his memory alive. Because as we've all know, if you're new here, I'll explain. He wanted to be a cop so that he could help people. So through his memory, through his legacy, and through his name, we continue to fight so that we can save people. And if we can save just one person, then that's enough.
And our guest tonight is running for office in Tennessee. So, Victoria, would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about yourself for a few minutes?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm Victoria Broderick. I'm running for Congress in Tennessee's District 4 against Scott Desjardins. I'm a mom of two, a fur mom, a working class woman who currently works in support, tech support specifically. And I am running to protect our rights, protect our children, and put more common sense back into DC. And that's why I'm sharing this lovely live with both of you all to just talk about what we need to be doing. And as a candidate, I believe that I can bring that change to DC.
Nice. Yeah, so tonight, for everyone listening, it's a little different than what we usually do. Tonight, instead of talking about a person who's experienced gun violence firsthand or has lost someone to gun violence, instead we're going to kind of talk broadly about the state of the U.S. and specifically looking at Tennessee, because we have Victoria here to kind of represent. But we're also going to talk about some other news stories. I know there's some things that I know Brett wants to talk about. So we're going to kind of focus about guns and gun violence more generally and holistically this evening. So to kind of start out, what does Tennessee kind of look like right now?
Well, we're the state right now. We had the Covenant shooting just over a year ago. And we've been having this huge surge in wanting change, wanting to protect our schools, and that's not happened. And what you're seeing in Tennessee is a lot of people respond to that. Specifically, the Tennessee Three. You've got Gloria Johnson, Justin Pearson, and Justin Jones, who were standing with the parents of the Covenant moms and Covenant families, and consequently, they were kicked out of the state house. Now, Gloria Johnson didn't get kicked out. We all say that that's race related. She is white, and the other two gentlemen were black. So it is racist, and Tennessee is not known for not being racist. Now, with that, we are seeing a lot of change. We have lots of gun sense candidates on the ballot, including myself, and we're trying to push back on this. But right now, Tennessee has a supermajority Republicans, and that is basically who is leading the charge and lack of gun restrictions here in Tennessee.
Now, one of the things that, I think would be good for our listeners to kind of know, like, what do you mean by gun sense? Because when people hear gun control, they immediately start thinking, oh, scary things. They're going to take away guns.
We're coming to your house and taking them.
Yeah, we're going to break in and just steal your guns from you. But what does it really mean, right? When you say that, what do you mean?
So when I say gun sense, I'm talking about it as a gun owner myself. I own, my family and my husband and I own a gun. But I say family because we have children in the home. So we want to make sure we're making good decisions because we have two children that could potentially have access to a gun. So when I say gun sense, I'm thinking as a responsible citizen who wants to do my part. And something I say all the time is as a gun owner, it's on me to take the charge and make the change and not pass the buck. I can't pass it off. I don't want to see it passed off. We need to approach this head on, and take some accountability in this situation that is affecting so many families across the country, but also in Tennessee. So why not, have background checks? Why not have safe storage rules? That's not harming anyone. If anything, it's protecting more of our community, specifically our children.
Yeah. So for reference for everyone to kind of know, Tennessee ranks number 10 for the 10 worst states for gun mortality in the United States. They have a rate of 20.5 per 100,000. To kind of just give some kind of reference, that's worse than Texas. Texas is 15.3 per 100,000. That's worse than Illinois, because everybody likes to scream Chicago. Illinois is 14.4, right? So Texas is worse than Illinois. But it's number 10, right? Like, which that's not a good place to be. That's not a good ranking. And it's gotten there over the last couple of years as the state legislature has loosened gun laws following things like Covenant, and the Waffle House shooting. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. What have you seen personally change in the state?
Honestly, I've seen a lot of voter engagement that hasn't been there before. Most of you won't know that Tennessee has one of the lowest voter turnouts. We just had a primary where it was one of the lowest we've seen in a recent history, which sounds really bad, but we also set the bar really low. So having that even lower turnouts is not good. For that, and with that, and what's gone on, we are seeing more engagement. And I do think that there is going to be a change going into this election season with now we've got a stronger candidate. Biden was a great gentleman, but him stepping down and making that decision has strengthened our ticket and strengthened those who are on the ticket, which helps down ballot, which we will see in initiatives. And I do think we'll see that in November. All that to say, right now in Tennessee, there is a change. We're seeing that change. The Republicans comment on how much they don't like the change of having Covenant moms there, having activists on the campus in the state capitol regularly. But that keeps the pressure on. It keeps them active. It keeps the Senate or the House General Assembly, honest, I think. And I think we'll see that change this year, and it will continue through the next cycle as we gain back those seats in the House.
Yeah, I think that isn't. I would say that wasn't unique to just Tennessee. I think voter registration and voters are up this year, especially after Biden dropped out and Kamala started running. And I see that as a win for us gun sense people as well, right? Because you have Tim Walz, who used to have an A rating with the NRA, lost it. It went to an F because he is a hunter. He is a gun guy. And even he was like, look, kids are dying. We have to do something about it. And that's what we need. A lot of people think that, when people are like, we need better gun laws, that it's just people that don't own guns or don't know anything about guns. But it is the vast majority of people, even gun owners will tell you, like, something's got to change, like it isn't just people who don't have weapons. It's everybody, because if you're a sensible gun owner and you know your stuff and you want to protect people, then it's quite clear, like, what we should do, in my opinion, anyways. And I was just looking at, the gun law strength in Tennessee. You are number 29 in the country for gun laws and number 10 in gun violence related deaths, which I mean really goes to show, y'all have a lower gun strength, gun law strength, and a higher mortality rate by that. So that's something that we have to look into.
Yes. I mean, we really do. We have to address it, because it's not, I think the idea that, the General Assembly had as a supermajority was like, oh, if we just brush this off, if we just wait it out, they're not going to come back. And that's not been the case. Actors and actresses have gotten involved. We have Gloria Johnson, who's running to unseat Marsha Blackburn. We have every federal candidate right now is a woman, myself included. I'm one of the younger ones. So, I mean, we're seeing a fundamental change in how people are responding to this, and that why behind running for office. You have Allie Phillips, who's running because of her abortion story. You have Gloria Johnson, who's running as a former school teacher, and she just wanted to see common sense in the General Assembly. And then the Tennessee 3 thing happened where they tried to remove her for standing with the Covenant families, and she stood in that line. So now she's like, I'm going to push back even harder, myself included. I'm that person. When I found out my opponent was going to run unopposed, I decided that that was unacceptable. And my opponent, Scott Desjardins, pulled a gun on his wife to force her to get an abortion. And it's not the only partner
Whoa.
that he has done that with. And he's a 14-year incumbent.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that, but let's push that to the next hour, like with your personal things. But yeah, I did want to talk about that because that made major news when
Yes, it did.
that happened. So kind of going back to like the idea that Tennessee, right, you know, they're ranked number 29 for laws, but they are number 10 for gun mortality, right? And where do you think that disconnect kind of falls with like, there are obviously some people, and obviously the majority of the people living in the state, but there are obviously a few people in Congress, in your state legislature, that want to do something, right? The Justins being the most prominent figures. But there's obviously also this disconnect. Is it just the money in politics? Is it just like NRA funding, or is there something else going on that Brett and I don't see?
I think it's a combination of the money in politics, because we have politicians in office that have been in office for years in the Tennessee legislature. A lot of these offices are basically where they can self-fund their own campaigns. So when someone goes up against them, a relatively unknown candidate, it's really hard for those candidates to get through the door, get their foot in the door, and have run a successful campaign. So to put in perspective, money-wise, what you're looking at a state level, you're looking at 250,000, which most Tennesseans don't, because our median income is, I think, like around between 30 and 40,000 a year. So we are a very impoverished state. We're very rural. We have a lot of rural districts. So you'll see that disconnect happen because you have the politicians who don't have to really be challenged for their seats. You have a very rural district, a very red district, but it's not red in the ways that you would think. It's red because of the news that's consumed on top of our political spectrum, like our political environment. And I think those things, all incumbency, has led to a redder, and a lack of engagement in voters also has helped contribute to that, which is really sad.
Has there been any, like, I know Texas is notoriously bad for gerrymandering the district so that they can be more red and have more in the state houses. Does that happen in Tennessee?
Yes, it does. So like the district I'm running for and a couple other districts, state house districts, they have gerrymandered them to be redder. So they've cut out areas where you could see a potentially more blue area, like a bigger city would be Rutherford County, which is split 5 ways, which is part of my district, and I incumbent all of the Rutherford County. But it's split state house wise 5 ways. So I have 5 candidates who are running with me and I help support, but their districts are so weird. Like you'll have one that's like houses that are across the street from each other, and it makes absolutely no sense to have it gerrymandered that way. But when you look at like Nashville and Murfreesboro, which is one of the big cities, Knoxville, Memphis, it's that same mindset. If they gerrymander them out, like Nashville is the most recent one to experience this. We have 5 congressional districts for Nashville that are all touching each other, and it doesn't make sense. Like it should be a blue, and it would be blue, but the way they've gerrymandered it as a formerly purple state has turned it red.
And that's wild that that's even possible, right? Like because at that point you're making it not about really what the people want, you're making it about what you want. And that
Mhm.
it doesn't go. Like we have the same thing, Texas is red on maps and everything, but all of our biggest cities are all blue,
Mhm.
you know? And so then it's like, oh, well, Texas is red. Well, land doesn't vote. And I think that's a
Yeah.
big thing that nobody really thinks about. So you see these pictures of Texas and it's all red except for the blue cities, except the blue cities have all the citizens in it. So
Mhm.
it's really infuriating that they continue to do this because I've said it before on here. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I hate the whole two-party system.
Mhm.
Obviously, I will lean more towards the Democratic ideals and whatnot, but like when you gerrymander these places, you are taking away women's rights, you're taking away LGBTQ rights, you're taking, you're loosening gun laws, you're loosening funding for education and everything like that, and it really hurts the people. It doesn't hurt the 1%.
Mhm.
It doesn't hurt the people that have been set for life or that are in these, career politicians. It doesn't hurt them, but it hurts their constituents. It hurts the people. And it really pisses me off.
Mhm. I mean, it should make everyone angry. It should make you angry that the party that's screaming about your rights and your freedoms and, this big bad evil guy on the other side's not, which is the left. Almost always it comes with some comment like that. It's that party that's enacting these things and they're emboldening themselves to behave even worse. It's become the situation like in my small town where as a political candidate I cannot go to any events in the city or in the county and rent a public location, and that is come down from people and being emboldened and stopping freedom of speech. They won't let candidates on the square. Now, I could test it tomorrow and be like, or figure out if they're doing it to Republicans as well, which I highly doubt that. Um, However, as someone who's trying to get in front of the people and not be the bad guy, I'm trying to play by the rules, but the rules keep changing and they're playing a whole different game that I'm trying to respectfully do, which won't go over well, um, because I live in a small town.
Oh, I feel you on that. That's why I'm not good at giving advice because I'd have just said, fuck it, go do it and
Mm-hmm.
stand on the square and start talking and everything and then get arrested for it. But hey,
That's what Gloria Johnson said. She said, just go do it. And I keep telling, I joke with my campaign manager every day. I was like, if I get arrested, I'll get elected.
I
And
listen.
that's so sad.
Well, no, exactly. And I mean, sometimes drastic changes or drastic actions have to be taken, unfortunately, because I mean, I kind of felt the same way when I started speaking out and speaking for Uzziah. When I would do the interviews or I would talk, I'd be in like my work clothes, more what they want you to look like and everything until it got to the point where it was like nobody's listening. So I'm just going to be me, and then I called Greg Abbott a obscene word and people started listening and now I get arrested for saying the F word. So I mean there's goods and bads with stepping out of the traditional political space. But no, I understand and like we should be able to just follow the rules and we should be able to play the game the way that the game is designed. But when you're adding rules and taking away rules, then it leaves it a very handicapped game at that point, so that there's always a clear-cut winner, even though you may not be the best person. And most of the time, if you have to change the rules to fit your narrative, then you're not the best person for the people.
Well, and to kind of
Yeah.
add on to that, though, like they don't play by the rules though, right? Like they change the rules to suit whatever, that they need. And I think that's been a long like criticism of the left, right? And I like kind of seeing the energy that I see on the national level because that when they go low, we go high bullshit doesn't help anybody because it doesn't get any of our people elected that would make changes that we want to get seen, right? So should we follow rules that they're going to just throw aside when when it's convenient for them anyway?
I mean, it's a great question, and I feel like we're seeing the gloves come off. I talk about it all the time. They're like, "Where? What happened to the tolerant left?" I'm like, "That's not here. You had that for the last 10 years. You're not getting it anymore. You just get, you know, non-gloves to be, politically correct."
No, exactly. And like that's the way that I tend to lean towards thing like, situations now, right? It's like, look, if you're not going to, like we said, you're going to change the rules or whatever, well, you're still going to hear from me. You're still going to see my face. I don't care what happens. And obviously, since losing Uzziah, like I have a sense of I don't have anything else to lose. So I'm like, fuck it, arrest me, you know. But, and I
Yeah.
don't suggest that, but at the same time, like when people refuse to listen and when people refuse to look, you have to make them listen. You have to make them look, unfortunately, because like people are so brainwashed and indoctrined within their own families, especially in states like Texas and Tennessee. It's always been
Mm-hmm.
this way. And if you don't vote this way, if you don't like this person, then you're a POS, you don't belong in this family. And we see that a lot. And I hear from a lot of people like, um how do I vote how I want to? And I always try to tell people, well, just go and vote because nobody knows your vote
Mm-hmm.
but you. If you want to vote for somebody that your parents or family or husband or wife don't want you to, they don't have to know. Go in and vote
Mm-hmm.
and then lie. I don't care. Like do what you
Yeah.
need to do.
Well, they're not in there. There was like a little picture that's been going around, and it's like, a little message saying nobody's in the booth with you when you're voting. You can vote however you want to. And it's that, I have to remind voters when I'm out talking to them and they lean out the door and they whisper, "Are you a Democrat?" And it's like, yes, yes, we exist. And then I have to say, Republicans will never come to the door. They're not coming to your door. They're not going to knock on your door. They don't care. I'm here because I want to hear from you and I want to be that for you. And I think that there's a fundamental difference with that because they're told constantly by their news sources, by the people who don't want to see it change. They're being told that we're the bad guys, that we're coming for them. When really it's like, I don't really care that you have this gun in your house. What I want to see is you understand that you have a role to play and we can make this better for everyone and protect your rights at the same time. It is that simple. And why is it not worth it? If it saves one child's life, that's worth it to me.
Uh, Ben, that's the clip for the week, by the way.
Yeah,
That right
that's the
there.
one that we're going to use. Yeah.
That's it. Because no, and that was just so like succinctly put, right? Like we say it all the time. We're not coming for your guns, right? We just if we don't care if you have a gun in the house, just have it locked up, right? Like
Yeah.
have it safely stored, right? Come about it the right way. I hate like I don't know if y'all have this problem, but we here in Texas do with the gun shows. We have the whole gun show
Mhm.
loophole and everything like that. And you can literally just walk in and if somebody's selling it as a collectible, then you don't have to do any paperwork or anything. And then you can go a table down and buy as much ammo as you want. So I mean, it's crazy. Do y'all have the gun show loophole there?
We do. We do. And it's almost terrifying to watch like the background checks and how quickly you can get through them, even at a store. Speaking when my husband and I decided to purchase one, he went to the store. I said, "Go get one." Unfortunately, it was after January 6th, and I was afraid. I live in a small town. I have some trauma from living in a small town and some of the experiences I had in high school being an outspoken liberal feminist. Who would have known that would have been a bad decision for my parents? But here we are. And I told him to get a gun, and he got it that day. No questions asked that day. It's like, to me, that was too fast. I expected at least a wait period. I expected 3 days. And nope, lo and behold, he comes home. We talk about it. We go over the safety, which I had a military friend teach me about guns when I was starting to like try and understand the appeal. Um, and now we have a gun and we've had one for 3, 4 years now. And it's definitely been a mindset change. But it's like I said before, I would give it up tomorrow if it meant that one kid is safe. Like, that's where I come from. I have two boys, and I can't stomach sending them to school in the current situation, but I believe in public school. I want to protect public school. And I don't, frankly, we don't have the income as a working class family to homeschool or have some specialized or go to private school. So we're at the mercy of the system, and I want to fix the system so it's better for everyone, not just for my family.
Absolutely. And I mean, you hit it right on the head, right? Like you can go in and same day walk out with a weapon. And so like one of the things that I talk about is like mandatory waiting periods, 30 days, 60
Mm-hmm.
days, whatever, because the problem is that the people that have to have a gun right now are the people that are going to do nefarious things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like with anything that I talk about, right? Background checks, safe storage, waiting periods, everything that we talk about, normal, everyday, responsible gun owners don't care, right? They're like, okay, right? If it works, it works, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the issue is that we've come to a point in America that I feel like we're just like, these politicians that are in here, they're just like, oh, it's not going to work. Oh, then what are you going to do? What are you going to change, right? Because the old way isn't
Mm-hmm.
working. We see children get murdered in schools every year, multiple times a year, and you're not doing anything about it. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about, especially the Republicans, and like I said, I speak from going into the Texas sessions and everything like that, but on the federal scale as well, they always say, oh, well, it's mental health. But then they don't address the mental health because as long as you've got that boogeyman over there, then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, then that's the problem. So we're not addressing mental health because if we address mental health, because, all countries have mental health problems, we're the only ones that have this, school
Mm-hmm.
shooting problem. But if we address the mental health and kids are still getting killed and there are still mass shootings and there are still gun violence, then they cannot blame it on the boogeyman anymore. And then they would have to look at the guns, but that hurts their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And I mean, we have to go ahead. Sorry,
no,
Brett.
no, I was just gonna say, like, go ahead and say what you were gonna say because I was gonna segue into something else real quick. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, I think this whole idea that it's not interconnected, because we take it to a state level, we take it to a federal level. It's all interconnected. We have to address. We can't just address one thing. We have to address all the things that are like the socioeconomic issues, the things that cause people to not get help when treatment when they need. You not having access to healthcare, that affects your mental health. It also affects your ability in life. And if you're having a hard time, it's harder to catch issues. You can't work, et cetera, all these things. And it compiles, and that can lead to more issues. That can lead to more gun violence. And it's like, when we talk about it, they don't like it when we interconnect it. They don't like it when you say, we can't just address the one thing. We can't just blame mental health and then be unwilling to fix it. We can't just say it's all these things and it won't get fixed tomorrow. But if we address all of them together and in a reasonable amount of time with reasonable expectations, we can in fact fix this problem and fix some other things that need to fix it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, we were both talking about kind of like the school system and other things. I mean, that might be a good time to segue into what happened to you today, Brad.
Yeah. So today, and this, I think maybe it was an hour ago, maybe a little bit longer, we get a text from our school district saying, hey, watch this YouTube video. Our superintendent comes on and says, oh, a child brought an inappropriate item to school. My first thought is not gun, right? Like when you say inappropriate item, I'm like, oh shit, wow. But a third grader, for us, a third grader brought a BB gun to school today. But the thing that irritates me the most, I mean, there's several things, but after our shooting here, they were like, oh, these fences are going to cure it all, right? Just fences. Let's put a couple more officers there. It's going to fix it. This kid went through the whole school day. And I believe it was when he was getting in the bus line or something like that, pulled the BB gun out of his backpack and aimed it at a kid. Luckily, it was unloaded. Luckily, it wasn't a real gun, although a BB gun could have severely injured another third grader. But this is a 8, 9-year-old kid bringing a gun into school in Uvalde, right? And what's going to happen, right? The politicians here in Texas, the Republicans, they're not going to do anything about it. Our school district has already showed that even after mass shootings, we're not doing anything about it. Our city leaders, our county leaders, hell, some of them are officers that were there that day, so they're not going to do anything about it. And the thing that was going through mine and my wife's head, like so bad earlier, was that we have another child in that school. So on top of losing Uzi, there is a potential now that we could lose another child because gun violence is not being addressed like it should. We're getting the thoughts and the prayers, and then that's that. And then you have people like, over there in Tennessee, Tim Burchett, who is like, yeah, we're not going to fix anything. And I think that's the whole mentality I feel of the Republican system, is that we're not going to fix it.
Mhm.
And it's just,
They get caught.
Go ahead.
They get caught in closed door sessions saying, "Oh, just let it blow over, and then we'll do whatever." That was how they were going to do the abortion thing here in Tennessee. They're like, "Just let everything die down, and then we'll address it." And they do the same thing with gun violence. And Brett, I am so sorry. That is, as a parent, as someone who has gotten to know you through TikTok, I cannot imagine the terror that would bring. And I am so sorry. From the bottom of my heart, I want to fix this for you. Even if I never get elected to office, I want to make this better for you. Because I'm so sorry.
I appreciate it. And yeah, it was terrifying, right? Because it was a third grader. It was a third grader, because us as a society has gotten to the point where it's like, these are just toys. These are just toys that like, what repercussions have came out from Uvalde, right? Like nothing, city, state, federally, nothing has come about it. So these kids aren't even scared, and like, obviously the whole thing that the superintendent was like, well, you just need to talk to your kids. Which, right, I agree with, right? Like, my kids are never going to do this because I talk to them and I show them love and I show them support. A lot of kids don't have that, right? Because of the messed up system that we have. And then on top of that, but it's like, that's all you have to say. How about, I really wish these administrators of these school districts would come 2 sessions with us and be like, look, we're tired of this. Like, I will never speak ill of teachers at all, because I think they are overworked and underpaid. But these administrators, right? It's like, if you really care about these kids, like you say you do, the number one killer of children is gun violence, and the education system is not speaking out. And we have mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting in all these schools, and I have yet to see a public education union or anything of that nature actually get up and talk about it. So like, we're just, like you said, is, well, let's just let it blow over, and then what? And then the cycle just continues and continues and continues. And this is the first time this year, right? A kid last year at the junior high brought a gun, a real live gun. Once again, the fences didn't catch it. These cops didn't catch it. Last year, a second, it was like a first or second grader brought bullets to the elementary school. And we're not even, they don't even talk about it loud, because that is how acceptable this has gotten in America, where it's like, oh yeah, he just brought a gun to school. Oh, well, whoop-de-doo. At least he didn't kill anyone. Like, and it's just, it is baffling to me.
Well,
So that's why I'm
it's
all worked up today.
I mean, be worked up, stay mad. I'll be mad for you if you want to pass it on, because I'm here to fight. Like, this is unacceptable. And to speak on your point, the child left their home, put with that in their bag, got to school, got through those things, did all day, and then pulled it out. And we're seeing it now where parents are being held accountable, but those parents are culpable.
Yep.
Like they want to say, and you'll hear people all the time. I've had these conversations like, well, I don't want to be held accountable for that. No, you are, as the adult in the house, as the one with the fully developed brain that you're supposed to have, because children don't have a developed prefrontal cortex. They don't have that, sense of hey, I probably shouldn't do this, because if they get an idea in their head, they might run with it. And it's not until they fall and get hurt or something bad happens that they realize, and they have that fear set in and that logic set in of, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. Or that lesson, you
Right.
know? We're having these parents getting held accountable, and they're mad, but it's like, where did it fall short? Yes, it could have, maybe you did everything right. The kid left the house and it wasn't your fault. But we weren't able to stop it. That socioeconomic thing where there's a teacher who maybe could see something, or a counselor who's maybe checked in with the student, or any of those things. We don't have those abilities because we've completely bankrupted the system. And then we're like, oh, we'll just fix it with a fence. That's not how that works. I mean, look at the TSA. They're supposed to stop all these things, but in fact, it's not safer. It's not made it better. It's just made it more of a nightmare for everyone who's trying to go to the airport and just go on vacation or go on a work trip. And that, we have to fix it. Like, at the end of the day, we can't just pass the buck anymore. The day of passing the buck is over. And we talked about it earlier. The children are coming, and they're
Yep.
going to hold us accountable. Every single adult in the nation is going to be held accountable for not doing more. And they're going to ask what side of history you're on. And you'll have to answer honestly.
Yep. No, exactly. And that's another thing too, with these parents starting to be held accountable. We saw it just last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. The Santa Fe shooters' parents were cleared of all charges, which is absolutely bananas to me. I mean, literally, they knew what was going on with their child. They showed him where they had a safe, but he knew where the key was. He knew all of this stuff and did what he did. And I think that's the same thing. Like I said, like this morning, this kid had the BB gun in his backpack. What? And the superintendent said, "Oh, well, it was the brothers." Well, that's still on the parents as well, because as a parent, if you give one kid a BB gun, you let him have it, then you need to teach him to put it up safe, all of the safety measures that go along with it or anything, but they didn't. And so now, because it was left lying around willy-nilly, this third grader gets it, puts it in his backpack with the intent on doing some heinous shit though. And I think it really pissed me off about the speech from the superintendent, because they're like, we're going to try to see what his intention was. You knew what it was, right? He made it through the whole day and then pulled it out at the bus stop at one kid. You knew what it was, but we're not going to address that. And that is what is so extremely frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And kids are smart. Kids understand. And if the boundaries or the lessons, or you don't teach them for proper safety, they are able to figure enough out to do the thing. And not giving them credit for understanding the why to not do it is the same as not giving them credit for the why behind what they're doing. We have to tell them why not to. We have to give those healthy boundaries, and it has to be age appropriate. I'll give them that. It's a boundary system. But we also have to, the why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this as they get older, so they can understand? I the fact that the child made it that far and pulled it at that bus stop, the first thing I thought was, oh, he had a beef. There was like a beef there. There's
Yep.
something there.
Yep. And that is what's crazy, because and if you think about how long this weapon was in this backpack, and like I said, I will never blame teachers for anything. Like I said, they're overworked, they're underpaid, they have to buy stuff out of their own pockets. Some have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But because the system is so failed, that obviously the kid didn't think it was a big idea. And then you look at the other kid, how traumatized is that kid going to be? He had a gun pulled on him. He didn't know it was a BB gun. He wasn't
Yeah.
aware that it was unloaded, right? Like, how terrifying is that? But these people in these places of power, they don't care.
Yeah.
And it's like I
In
said, it's
Tennessee, their
crazy.
answer is to arm teachers. That's what they want to do. They
Yeah.
want to arm teachers. And districts have had to come out. The resolution passed. Teachers and districts have come out saying this is not something we're going to do. But think about it. If that was the same situation and they did the teacher here in Tennessee and a kid brings a BB gun and the teacher is trigger happy or untrained, what happens? Could that kid have gotten, shot because they were carrying this gun in school? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I'm going to assume that in the right circumstances, the kid's mad at the teacher, the kid's mad at the other student, the teacher witnesses, split the second, things happen. We watch this in police, which is a whole nother thing, but they're trained. Teachers are not. It's not part of their job description unless we're giving them a lot more money to deal with that and deal with the potential trauma and lifetime trauma that could happen from the state situation. I respect teachers so much because they deal with so much and that should not be on their plate.
Well, to kind of
Absolutely.
build on that too, real quick. I don't know if either one of you have seen the law they passed in Utah. It's not even arming teachers or school faculty there. It's getting a random volunteer, giving them $200 for the year, but they just volunteer, random person, right? Like no necessary vetting, and they're requiring every school to have those people in place like in the next couple of months.
How is that supposed to work out? I have so many questions.
Yeah, I'll make a video on it tomorrow on TikTok. But yeah, it's the craziest thing that I've ever read. They call it the Guardian program, and it's a fully volunteer process. They're not allowed to pay these people. They're giving them a stipend to cover the gun or the ammunition or whatever. But they think that people, out of the goodness of their heart, are going to give up their time to go sit at the school and play guardian. I would be worried about whoever that person would be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first thing I go to is like, oh, so you're just gonna have a grandparent sitting in the kindergarten classroom that just happens to be locked and loaded? What? That make sense.
I am so baffled right now. I am so, and it's anyone, because we have the Guardian programs here in Texas, or it's called the Guardian program, but it is armed teachers, right? Like there's some schools, but this isn't even armed teachers. This is just a random, any Tom, Dick, or Harry that's like, hey, I want to go play Rambo at a school.
So they tried to pass arming teachers, and the teachers revolted against it, as we're seeing everywhere else, right? The teachers don't want to do it. And so the legislature's response then was, well, if the teachers don't want to do it, then the new law is that any person that wants to do it can just show up and do it.
Okay, so we're not vetting them. We're giving them a gun, and we're just letting them around. Or who are these people that are going to volunteer? Because that's
my question.
To make a safe assumption that it is not going to be the cream of the crop. It's going to be people who have no business being around children.
Right. It's going to be people that aren't safe, right? With gun, because who's going to want to do that for free, right? Because like I said, they're going to give them like a $250 lifetime fee. That's what they're going to give them to do this. And, these are not like, it's going to be during school hours. So like responsible people are going to be at work in a lot of cases, right? Like, so who are they really going to have show up to volunteer their free time to just sit around and play Rambo?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think they can be the hero in these moments. And it takes a lot to be that person. And anyone who has like a shred of thinking that they can be that person is probably the worst person who won't do it.
Right.
Like understanding that immediate violence. Yeah. Like,
I think that's the truth. Go ahead, Brett.
In my head, I'm just seeing like somebody just rolling out of bed. It's like 10:30 and they're like, well, got to go and protect these kids. And it is the most craziest idea I've ever had. Just like 10:30. Oh, I'm gonna go and watch for like 2 hours, right? Like,
this is a guy with a gravy stain on his shirt.
Yes, like, oh my God. I'm just the
He gets a
visions in
free
my head.
gun, so he's sold,
Well,
right?
no, I mean, no,
Like
no,
that.
they have to provide their own gun.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh,
Like they're not giving them
Lord.
anything. They literally have to provide everything. That's why I'm saying, like, the kind of person who would show up for this, because there's no incentive. There's no incentive,
These are
right?
the ones
Mhm.
that couldn't make the military. These are the ones that couldn't make the police positions and still wanting that Rambo effect that we talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. The person that's been sitting around playing Call of Duty and is like, I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna shoot me a terrorist.
Mhm. Yeah.
this isn't real life.
That's,
This
you
can't
know,
be real. Like, you're not messing with me, Ben. Like,
No, 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 no. I'll pull up the
color
article.
me unsurprised is the phrase that has become my like motto. I'm not surprised anymore. Like I
So,
keep feeling like I should have a hold my beer moment and it's not. It's stopped.
sorry.
Why is it like this?
This article was published on August 20th, and a new state law requires every Utah school to have an armed guardian on site every day. The goal is to protect the school against threats. Districts are struggling to find volunteers willing to respond with lethal force, and there are concerns about who these school guardians will be. Among other things, the law clearly states the guardians can't be teachers or principals, and they can't be assigned the job. They have to be volunteers. The person who wrote the bill is like, kind of think of them like an air marshal on an airplane, but those people are paid
Paid and trained.
and they're law enforcement.
this could be so it's any Billy Bob down the street can do this shit. Like, that is what is most baffling. Like, you just wake up one day and you're like, yeah, I want to go and like, and do you have a schedule? Like,
And here it is. So for taking on this most serious responsibility, guardians will be compensated with a one-time $500 stipend. And the lawmakers expect them to buy their gun, their ammunition, whatever, out of that $500, and then do it forever for free.
Wow.
is
I'm not surprised. However,
When the school district like polled teachers and stuff to find out, 3/4 said no thanks.
I mean, they're not. I wouldn't sign up for that.
No
I,
reasonable, rational person would, right? Because again, it's not compensated. It just sounds dangerous as hell, like to just sign up for something. Like, I mean, it's not something that a rational, reasonable person would do, which means then the people who sign up for it are not reasonable and not rational, because you're basically doing this security job for free.
and what happens when this person inevitably, because they're not vetted, they're not paid, they're not professionals, lashes out at a student,
Yeah.
or lashes out at a teacher.
Yep.
These are not the people you want around your children. And my next thought is they'll lash out at a student, because anyone who's sat in a middle schooler's room, middle schoolers are learning, they have brain development, but also it's hard being around a teenager that's that age. I mean, I was a substitute teacher. I don't know how middle school teachers do it. I preferred younger children or older high school students, but every grade there's some semblance of annoyance that happens because you're dealing with tiny human beings who are learning how to human, and putting someone who's already not qualified, not capable, and should not be in the room with them is just asking for something to happen.
I also want to point out that Utah is red, 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 red.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised
Mm-hmm.
at all in the least. If our teachers don't want to do this, if our principals don't want to do this, as we've seen in Uvalde, if our cops don't want to protect our children, but we're supposed to expect the Gravy Seals to come out for $500 and do this for a lifetime. And then not just that, but back, onto I will forever be baffled by that. Was really hoping that Ben was just messing with me. But back to like teachers being armed. I had a teacher when I was in middle school. Well, I was a principal who literally went crazy His house was on school property and everything. He was throwing chairs and everything out of the window, threatening kids as they were driving to the field house and everything like that. Imagine if he was locked and loaded. Like, and that scares the shit out of me, right? And not just that, but like, because I hear this all the time. Well, what do you think about teachers being armed? I have a few concerns with it, right? Like, we've already established that teachers are underpaid and they have to go out of pocket to buy their materials, right? So now they're going to have to buy their gun out of their own pocket. They're going to have to buy their ammo. They're going to have to buy their training if it's even required. They're going to have to purchase that, right? And then following up with that, so we're already at a disadvantage. And my thought process always goes to this: where is the teacher's desk located? Typically, it's at the front of the class. Where is the door to the class? At the front. So if a school shooter goes in, just like here, shot through the door, was going to take out the teacher. Like, and then that is down, and then there's just an extra gun. Plus, we've already seen in several cases where people in schools have left guns in bathrooms and everything, and children have found them. So it's like, I hate that the only answer that the Republicans have for anything is let's add more guns.
Well, like, we've talked about this before, right, Brett? Like, I teach, at a college, right? And if something were to happen, I would be the most, qualified person to stop it, right? But I'm the very first person you see. I'm the first person standing at the front of the door. What is all my training worth in those moments, right? What is any training that I have worth when I am the first person that's in the sights, of those guns?
Exactly. Well, and not just that, but I've talked to loads of teachers, right? And I've asked them this question. Could you shoot your own student? Because the vast majority of these are students who have been their students. And most of the teachers have said no, like they couldn't. And now we're putting our teachers in this position instead of once again doing something about the weapons. It's always reactive instead of proactive, right? Like that thing that came out saying, oh yeah, we need to start teaching third graders like how to stop the bleed, right? How about we just make it to where they don't have to bleed to stop the bleed? It is always reactive instead of proactive, and reactive leads to dead children, whereas proactive can protect them.
Well, and it's unnatural to run into violence. It's unnatural. You are naturally going to steer away from those. I'm about to do it again. I think about being a goalie. I was a goalie for soccer, and part of my training was having the guys' soccer team come and take shots at the goal, and you can't flinch. You can't move out of the way. You are supposed to take that hit, and it's unnatural. You're supposed to dive onto the ground, your full body diving, however it is, to the ground. And the training sessions were to break that, to break your fear of falling, your fear of getting hit, your fear of getting kicked, your fear of all those things. And even though you have all this training and those circumstances, it's still unnatural. You're not going to react perfectly. And I think about that, and I think it's relatable. You can have all the proper training and still not react well. You can have no training and react well. But it's that split second decision of between reacting well and not reacting. You don't know how you're going to be until you're in that moment, and you can't assume that you're going to react well. And you should not assume that you will react well, because that's going to lead to more death.
Exactly. And like self-preservation is a number one thing subconsciously that we experience, right? Like, this is why the military has to train as much as they do. This is why cops are supposed to train as much as they do. Because you're supposed to try to get out of that self-preservation to help others. But even like I said, as we've seen, self-preservation won in Uvalde, right? Like 376 cops sat outside for 77 minutes because they didn't want to get taken out by these weapons. So self-preservation wins most of the time. And now we're supposed to just throw more guns into the mix. It's just, it's completely baffling to me.
And there are people watching who will see clips of this. They'll say things like, I could stand up. I could do it. Okay. For those people watching, I want you to go to a mall and walk the opposite direction the entire time. If you can't do it the entire time, you aren't going to be the one who's going to stand up and save everyone. And, that's just how it is. It takes a lot of courage to be the person to step out the crowd and say, this is wrong. I'm going to stop it. I mean, it just does. I'm not proud enough. I'm not too proud to say that I can't promise that I'd be that person. So I'm never going to say that I would be that person. And instead of saying I'm going to be that person, I'm going to go out and legislate and try and make it better for everyone. That's what we should be doing. It shouldn't be a reactive state like you've been saying, Brett.
Exactly. And even like with my kids now, I tell my kids, do not be a hero. Do not get the hell out. Run, fight, whatever. Do not be the hero though. And that's sad to say because my children are very protective of others. Like really are. Like they're really protective people. But I'm having to tell them like don't because I don't want you hurt and I don't want to have to go through all of this again. It's already bad enough. And we're seeing this in this country already, right? Where it's not, you know, I don't know the statistic, Ben might, but most people have experienced or been close enough around gun violence now, right? So much so that we're getting to the point where people are surviving two different shootings or succumbing to a second one, right? So like I know that there were kids at I believe it was Sandy Hook that ended up at MSU when the MSU one went down. So two separate ones. I actually know, so Shondell Brooks, she's running for District 60 in Tennessee for the state house, lost her son Akila in the Waffle House shooting. His brother Abidi was there, and then later on, I think it was last year, was shot himself. Like people are now experiencing it two times, and then that's going to start being the norm. And then when the two times is done being the norm, then it's going to be we're used to experiencing it three times and then four times until we do something. And these kids are tired of it. I mean, they are tired. We didn't grow up in the era of lockdowns, like school shooting lockdowns. We didn't. These kids have, and they've had to deal with all that psychological terror of maybe this isn't a drill, maybe this is, having to realize and like, why do we put our kids in a position where, hey, you might have to protect yourself from getting shot? Like it's just it's so unreal that is the expectation that we have for kids instead of being the adults and being the voices for the voiceless. We're just like, whatever, survive it.
Yeah, I remember my first lockdown in school that was gun related. I mean, I was probably fourth grade in Georgia. There was a guy running around the neighborhood. I mean, the details are foggy now, but he was in my neighborhood, which was right by the school. My parents picked the neighborhood so we could walk to school and walk home. And I remember getting locked down, and we're in this trailer behind the school because the school has overgrown its actual size at this point. And I remember thinking, we're in this small little tin can, and this person could walk through the tree line that we sometimes walk through to come to the school, and nobody's going to be able to stop them because a lot of parents don't use it. Children use it to get to walk around the neighborhood. And all I could think was that's going to happen. And then we had to have teachers walk us into the neighborhood, like even after everything had cleared, because they wanted to make sure we were okay. And we always took back ways, like we were, shortcut kids. Like, and I think about that, and I think about that experience, and it lives rent free in my head. But not a couple years later, now talking about this, I remember there was a park where we were playing, or we were about a mile away, hanging out, and some of the kids had walked to the park, and then they came running back, and we heard the gun violence start because people had decided to get into a gunfight at this park where children are and teenagers are, and we're all just having to have a fun Friday night. And then I'm watching my friends run in fear back. That shouldn't be an experience that everyone experienced. And I know it's way worse it is today than it was when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago because I'm not that old.
Right. Well, I can say that I never even had a mass shooter drill or anything like that. The only drills that we had were tornado drills and fire drills, I believe. Like that was it. And now we've just added, like, okay, we can't do anything against, natural disasters, obviously, right? Like, but this is a disaster that can be treated. And like I said, we're telling kids, oh, well, just go hide in a corner where you're sitting ducks and hope, right? Because it's the thoughts and prayers thing all over again. Well, just pray that you don't get hit. Pray this doesn't happen to you. And it's frustrating.
No, uh, I we have to change it, and we can change it. There are enough people out there now that want to change it, but it's going to take all of us.
Yep, absolutely. Ben, you ready for the reset?
Let's do the reset. All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. For those of you who are still listening with us, you are listening to Stories from the Cold Dead Hands, a radio show where we uplift the voices of those who are lost. We focus on the survivors and the families of those who are lost because too often the media focuses on those who perpetrate these horrible acts. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Benjamin Dowd-Arrow. I'm an internationally recognized gun scholar, having published multiple papers studying things like the social determinants of gun ownership and gun policy support. In other words, why do people want guns and why do people vote for certain policies? I also publish on the health and well-being aspects related to firearms, particularly like how it affects our mental health and our physical health. My co-host is Brett Cross.
I'm Brett Cross, and I lost my son Uzziah at the Robb Elementary massacre on May 24th, 2022. And yeah, like Ben said, too many times that the media doesn't talk about our children, right? They talk about the perpetrators. And I realized this because after our shooting, I realized that I could tell you who did Columbine, but I couldn't tell you a single victim's name. And that since has changed. And especially I wanted it to change in the wake of ours because I wanted the world to know who Uzi was and not who our perpetrator was. I wanted them to know his smile and his laugh and his voice and his love for Spider-Man and all of these things because he isn't just a statistic. He was the most amazing kid ever. So, like I said, we've been fighting ever since then to make sure that he is remembered.
Yeah, and tonight our guest is Victoria Roderick, who is running for Congress. Victoria, you want to take a second and talk about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Victoria Broderick. I'm running for Congress in Tennessee's District 4. I'm a mom of two with four cute little fur babies, and I am running for rights in Tennessee. As a working class woman, I want to see my rights represented, and I also would like to see our rights protected and our children safe in our communities.
Yeah, so we've spent the first hour kind of talking about just like, you know, the gun issue kind of broadly, kind of you know, holistically, like what's going on, the frustrations that we run into with politicians, some of the different solution states have suggested, including this one we just talked about, where Utah is just going to let some rando Call of Duty Gravy SEAL step up and like save the day. Um, let's move specifically towards like your campaign. Right, like we mentioned earlier, you're a gun sense politician. You kind of define what that means, but like if you could get your wish list, like if there were three things like related to guns that you could get past, talk about them for a little bit. Tell us what they would be.
Yeah, so things that I would like to see as a gun sense candidate, and we talked a little bit about this. This is just, we want reasonable policies that affect change. As a gun sense candidate, I am Mom Demands Act endorsed, and I want to see comprehensive background checks, mandatory waiting times. I think those two things allow for one, to catch people who might fall through the cracks, and then you add that waiting time layer to it where if someone has a act that they want to commit, they have to wait until, and that can get us past that, giving us more time to catch people who are potentially going to commit a violent act. I want to see safe storage. We have a policy here in Tennessee where it's an open carry state. You don't have to have a permit to open carry, and a lot of people store their guns in their cars, and that leads to guns stolen from cars to commit acts of violence. And I want to see our schools safer. So one of the things I would like to see is, I would like to not see a ban, but maybe between the background checks and whatnot, we need to get rid of assault weapons and, semi-automatic AR-15 so that those are not being used in our schools. I don't want to take away your guns. I have to say that because that's something that a lot of people who fight against us gun sense candidates say. We're not here to take your guns. We just want to make it safer for the rest of the world. And that includes every child, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. I want to see if I could save one child, that's worth it to me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to I was actually in Tennessee last week with Change the Ref, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a picture that I took from the hotel when I came outside. It says, "Welcome from the MNPD. As a friendly reminder, lock your vehicle, remove valuable items from vehicle such as guns, money, and spare keys." I mean, that's the first few words. So I didn't realize that people were just stashing their guns in their cars that much in Tennessee, right? Like that is just, when
Mm-hmm.
I saw this, it was the craziest thing to me because it wasn't like I said, your valuable items and the first thing on the list is guns. It's
Mm-hmm.
wild.
I mean, and it was something that I was even shocked to hear, after the government, like I've only been running for office since February of 2024. And that's because my opponent was going to run unopposed. And I said over my dead body, which feels really on the nose with everything that's gone on. But that's why I got on the ballot as a relatively unknown candidate. But one of the things I learned was the that they get stolen from cars. I couldn't believe that statistic. I
So
couldn't understand it.
think about it like this. Okay. So today, right, no one keeps cash at home anymore, right? Everything's digital, right? The minute you buy jewelry from a jewelry store, the value is gone. The minute you walk away with it, right? Like there's nothing there, but guns maintain their value. And so, like, one of the things that I teach my students is that if you want to guarantee that someone breaks into your house, put a sign out front that says, "We don't call 911 here," and shows a picture of a gun, because that tells people that you have firearms, and those firearms, if nothing else, they gain value, but they never lose value, right? All the guns that I own, I can find someone who will buy them for what I paid for them, right? And so this is why police cars will get broken into, right? Here in Tallahassee, the chief of police at Florida State University had his car broken into 3 different times. People trying to steal the guns, trying to steal from a cop because they know that they have them. And again, it's worth that risk, right? It's worth the risk of trying to break in and steal this. They're not going to break in and steal your television, right? I've got a television in this office that sells right now brand new for $200, right? Why would they risk going to jail to steal this to resell it for maybe $50, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you have a gun, that gun probably is going to sell for $600, $700, and they can get that. And so, like, yeah, it makes total sense to me that they would be warning people not to leave guns in cars because, especially in a state like Tennessee, and if you got a sticker or something on your truck or car that says, you're a hunter or you don't call 911, that is advertising to criminals that you want to be burglarized.
That tracks so much. So much is making sense with that. Because I think about all the people, even in my county, who have, come take my gun. And it's like an invitation. And even in my high school, there was a rule that they wouldn't punish. They tell students at the beginning of the year always to leave their hunting rifles at home. But almost always they were hunting rifle in someone's truck that nobody was going to address because they were like, I'm driving granddaddy's truck or whoever's truck or whatever reason. So that track, color me unsurprised.
Yeah.
You said that you started running in February because the person that is running against you was there, and you said over your dead body. Who are you running against?
I'm running against Scott Desjardins. He's a 14-year incumbent. He has been challenged every year but 1 year. But he is most famously known, and we talked about this a little bit, we touched on it, because he pulled a gun on his wife to force her to get an abortion.
Yeah. Let's
And
talk
that's
about
not the
that.
only abortion. There's not the only abortion story. He has forced 2 other partners to get abortions as well. including one where he had to drive out of state because of how far along she was, and that was a mistress. He's also known because he was selling and dealing to his patients because he's a doctor, so he was giving them drugs. Yeah, not a stand-up guy. Now he's a MAGA Republican. He's a Freedom Caucus member. He does not believe in gun sense legislation. He almost always votes with the Freedom Caucus Party. And yeah, he's a 14-year incumbent who's been caught in closed door sessions saying he doesn't speak to constituents because he would lose votes if he did.
Well,
So that's who I'm running against.
Let's talk about the fact that he's probably anti-abortion on his voting record, and yet he's had multiple, right?
With multiple partners.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I was like, I don't care that he has multiple partners. What happens between you and your partner is none of my business, but don't take my rights away. And I'm not new to the political. I should add here as a little plug, I've been a county party chair in one of Tennessee's 93 counties for 2 years now. I stepped into that role just after Roe was overturned because I literally said I couldn't sit by any longer. I had to do more. And since the doors weren't opening for me as just a citizen voting, speaking out, I was like, this is the next step. And I didn't realize at the time that it was a step into the political world because you start to learn the figures within the state. You start to get to know different people within the organization, which would help you if you decided to run, which is why I was on a district call in this February of 2024 with our district, basically the head of our district. And she was saying, we're not going to have anyone to run against him. We can't find anyone because every year we've run someone, even with money raised, they've moved the needle, but they haven't been able to get in office. And I just couldn't sit with that. I knew when I took it on that likely I would lose. I was told that repeatedly. The party's already decided that I'm not a viable candidate, and the fact that I probably won't win because of the district seat. But that's not a reason not to be here. That's not a reason not to run. And that's not a reason that I could use as not a reason to give people an option on the ballot that wasn't a Republican incumbent with his voting record.
Well, and that just shows like your fight, right? It's one of those against all odds things. And I'm curious, how do you feel like after Covenant happened? Because I'm seeing here, right, his last election was 2022, so that was the year ours happened. But 2023, last year, was when Covenant happened, right? So do you see any change in like people are like, okay, yeah, we need to find somebody for gun sense?
I mean, you'll see a little bit, but the hard part of politics is we have this old school mindset of we want candidates who can win. So when they look at district races, they look at the races that are potential to flip. We have Andy Ogles, who is one district over from me. Miriam is challenging him. Her name escapes me at the moment, but Miriam's great, and that's a flippable seat. So they're focusing their energy on the flippable seats. The same thing with Marsha Blackburn and Gloria Johnson. Gloria Johnson is challenging Marsha Blackburn. If you know who Gloria Johnson is, it's because she's part of the Tennessee Three. Gloria Johnson, Justin Jones, and Justin Pearson stood up after the Covenant shooting because they were basically out with the Covenant families saying, this is wrong, we have to do more. And consequently, they tried to remove them from office and successfully removed both the Justins, which was racially motivated because they're two young Black men who are speaking up and have been activists in the state of Tennessee for years now. And Gloria Johnson only kept her seat because she is white. And she has said it, and we'll all say it, that it was racially motivated, and they were all standing up for what is right. And that's why she's now challenging Marsha Blackburn. She wants to go through that next door, and it's the same reason I'm in this position. It's like the same thing we were talking about it earlier before we went live, as the why behind. It's like, I know you, Brett, and I know you, Ben, because I've been following most of you guys for a little bit now, but I was on TikTok, and now when I've started to run for office, I've started interacting more with those lives and going live with you all because I want to talk about it. I want to get my name out there. And I realized it's a full court press. I have to do everything in my power to make it a viable campaign. I'm not going it like the other candidates have, but I'm not going it like the last candidate had, who just didn't have the backing that I have now. And I'm considering this is luck. Luck is where preparation meets opportunity, and that is what I'm treating this as. I have the luck and momentum of an amazing candidate, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, at the top of the ticket now. And, we have the preparation of a party that has seen bad candidates, and some of them are stepping up to the plate, and it's a team effort. So all the state candidates and I are working together. A lot of the federal candidates are working together, and you are seeing that. Even if we've been told that our races aren't winnable, we're all working like that. Every race is winnable until the last minute of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's also something, right, that a lot of people overlook, right? You're actively on TikTok, right? Which, if we look at the voters, right, the boomers are dying off, right? It's the Gen Zs that are coming up that are voting age that may not have been voting age in 2022, right? And that is our biggest group coming in. It is those kids and everything, and they get their news and they get to see a lot of things from social media. So I think that is such a huge plus, that not only are you doing, the regular politics stuff, the block walking and everything like that, but you're also attacking it from a point of view where you can get even more like Gen Zs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
And
that is amazing.
and I'm listening. That's one thing that's part of how this like kind of started, is like listening to the lives. I was getting those talking points, hearing them over and over and over again. And now I'm a federal candidate, so a lot of the state level stuff, like tonight I had to do some research to really get the crux of what's going on in Tennessee, because while I know a general thing, I wanted to be better equipped because I'm running at a federal level. So a lot of the time I'm talking about federal issues, but it doesn't mean it's not an issue for federal candidates. I just needed to make sure that I was prepared. But I mean, that's part of this. Like, it's listening, it's understanding what you're doing. I do the canvassing, I knock doors, I go to meetings. I also work full time. So I'm doing all of this in my free time. Like last week, I worked every day last week except for one day, but every night I was on a live. Every night I was on a live until 11 o'clock at night, interacting with candidates or interacting with other candidates as well as TikTokers, because I wanted young people to get ahead of, like, get in front of me and see what I'm about, what I'm trying to do. We had some fun while we do it, but it's been great. It's been a great way to interact with younger voters, because as a younger person myself, I want to make sure they feel heard, because we're passing the torch at this point. I'm old at this point. They're the new ones. I'm fighting for their lives, for their rights, for everything. I just want to make my life better, and every single person underneath me to have a better life, and raise all boats.
Right, exactly. And I think that is, you said something that most people will not say. You're listening and you want to learn. And I in my life, right, I try to learn something new every day, because I feel like if we're not learning, then we're not living, right? So to hear that you are listening and learning, you can't say that about, most of these politicians out there. They're set in their ways. They're 100%. They don't care what people have to say. They want to get voted for them personally. They don't want to get voted in for their constituents' rights and thoughts and everything like that. So I love like that twist on it, because that's how it should be, right? Our politicians should listen to us, not the other way around. And we tend to forget that. I before starting to go into the Texas session and the federal into Congress and everything, we're brought up to believe that these politicians are just these super magnificent people that are larger than life and everything, until you meet them and you're like, dude, like, you're just a person, and I don't work
Mm-hmm.
for you. You work for us. And I think a lot of these,
Exactly.
especially these lifelong politicians that, your Ted Cruz's and your Tony Gonzalez's and shit like that, they tend to forget that. And they get this power trip going on, where that's why they don't want to leave office. They don't care about the betterment of people. They care about the betterment of themselves. And so I love that, your direction with this is you work for the people, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I say that too. It's funny when I'm out at events and if I see someone needs the door open, I open the door and I'll say something because I want to remind them, like, let your congressperson serve you. And I open the door because I want to make sure that they understand my role is to serve. I am a customer service professional. I understand my customer. When I was a substitute teacher, my customer was a student. When I was working at enterprise, it was an insurance person or just someone who needed a car for the day because they wanted to go on vacation. When I was working in apartments, it was the people coming in. Everything is related. And I try to take that. It's hard. Not all days are going to be easy. I'm not going to be perfect. I know that. But as a person who wants to serve, I want people to feel represented. And I think the moment that we start changing that and politicians do that, and it comes from a serving person, I think we will see a change. We will see a change in how we respond to our politicians. I'm not famous. I'm not anybody. I still watch Netflix on the weekends. However, my job that I'm trying to do is I am trying to serve you so that you are better and that all people in our country, this beautiful country that I love so much, are served well and are taken care of. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We only get one life, and it should be a good one.
Exactly. And from personal experience, right? There are politicians that I absolutely love because of that mindset, because they are like, dude, whenever you're in the Capitol or whenever you're in DC, just use my office. I mean, it's your office, right? It's the people's office. And then you have people that I've met that have slammed the doors on our faces and kicked us out of offices and everything like that, not working for us. So, like I said, absolutely love the politicians that are for the people. And quick shout out to Senator Roland Gutierrez and Representative Jarvis Johnson, because and too many to name, but yeah, I mean it's for the people, and that's I mean, it's right there in the Constitution. We the people. It's not us, the politicians, and you peasants, right? It's we the people. And that's how everything should be treated and seen.
Yeah. And we can bring back good old fashioned, loving your neighbor and taking care of everyone. I feel like that's gotten lost in, the last 10 years, 20 years, and it should be better. And the change is people who want to make it better. And I'm so lucky that I have so many amazing candidates who are running for office, some younger than me, that I get to meet, I get to learn. Like we said, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, but it's not being the smartest person in the room that makes you a good person. It's knowing how to build those people around you. Like, I'm sure that once I'm in office, because I'm willing into existence, I'm going to message Ben on TikTok and be like, hey, I need some stats, like real quick. Can you be my bestie? And that's what I'm going to do. When I need a veteran's opinion, I'm going to message Matt and be like, Matt, I need your opinion on this because you're someone I trust. The same thing go for, I'll be like, Brett, am I being the worst person ever? How do I talk to this person? And I know that you will come out and you will say those things. And that's what we
Absolutely.
should do. It should be a team effort. And that's what I want to bring to office. And yeah, I'm not a known candidate, whatever, but other candidates have done it. And you, the viewer, can make the change. You just have to vote. You have to take 3 people to the polls. I'd love your money. I'd love for you to donate to me, but tonight's not about that. Tonight is about helping families who are in need. Tonight is about making sure that your representatives represent you. So if they're not representing you, it's time for them to out the door.
Exactly, exactly. And so like I want to give the listeners and viewers a better sense of who you are. So I know we've talked on pro gun reform, right? I'm on your website right now. What other issues are important to you? Like what are you running on?
So one of the biggest ones I'm running on is reproductive freedom. And I say freedom because it's not just pro-abortion for me. Yes, I believe abortion is here, healthcare at the end of the day. I'm not your person if you want someone to say like pro-life or anything. I'm not your person. I'm sorry. But I believe that we should not take people's rights away. I believe that daycare should be accessible and affordable. I believe that mandatory maternity leave, paternity leave, at least 6 months. We are so behind every other developed nation. I want to see mandatory sick leave, mandatory vacation. And I know right now, I think the administration is like 10 days. I want 30 days. I want it like every other developed nation because you deserve time off with your families. Because in a country that claims family values, we don't really give people time. And I'm not just talking about people with families. I'm talking about, with children. I'm talking about families. You have a life. Your family could be anyone. You could be your best friend. If you want to go to 30 days on a vacation with your friend, you should be able to do that. You should be paid because you deserve time. We should be able to work to live, not live to work. And I want to see a change in our country for that. That's something that I feel passionately about. And it's part of the reason that I'm running for office. In 2021, I had an IUD fail. I was one of the 1% of people that has the unimaginable thing happen where I had weird symptoms for a couple of weeks, and I was like, something is wrong. I think I'm pregnant. And then I was. And, the doctor who's been in practice for 35 years has only seen this 3 times, and I was number 3. And she was like, well, we're going to find out, if the baby's holding the IUD because she had a person that had that happen. Unfortunately, I miscarried. And that was really hard. And we had to make those tough decisions ahead of time because, in a very short amount of time, we found out we were pregnant and there's all these risks of an IUD pregnancy and then what could happen throughout my entire pregnancy. And then we miscarried and had to make sure it completely miscarried. And would I be walking through a picket line at the closest Planned Parenthood to get a DNC, which is just a medical abortion to stop, finish the miscarriage out, which is just a polite word for, a spontaneous abortion. And I was like, okay, we're good. You can take that sigh that you take after you've just gone through an ordeal. And a couple weeks later, I'm pregnant again. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm a fertile myrtle and we're having to do tests because it wasn't the best circumstances to get pregnant. We're having to make sure everything's healthy. Luckily, we had a very healthy pregnancy with like just a minor hiccup and a very happy baby coming out. Well, he wasn't very happy when he came out because he's not supposed to be here, which I think is, I always make jokes. I'm like, I don't quite trust someone who's not meant to be here, but he is the sweetest 2-year-old now and just so kind. But 4 months after I gave birth, Roe was overturned and I was having birth control issues because I was limited. And I was just enraged. I was enraged and I just wanted to do more. So I was like, I'm going to put myself in the next room. And if that door doesn't work, I'm going to go in the next room and I'm going to start working my way into the room that's going to get me so that I can make these decisions because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. I don't want them walking through a picket line. I don't want them even the fear of walking through a picket line. I don't want them to have to worry that they're going to carry a pregnancy to term that is not viable or that they're going to die on the table because there's not enough doctors, whatever. It's not my business, and I want to make sure they get the best care. So all that to say, I was mad, and I decided that becoming a county chair was going to be the next step. And 2 years later, I found myself running for Congress, and here we are.
I want to say real quick, I understand about the not be supposed to be here thing, but the toaster failed when it hit the bath water. So
you got it in.
That was great. You got it in.
That was so good. You got it so good. So good.
And you were waiting. You were holding on to that one, Ben.
I was.
You were holding on to it. I
Love
actually,
lap toaster bath, baby.
yes,
Love
sir.
it.
I also, I mean, you were going in on it strong, right? So I didn't want to interrupt, but I was gonna ask. You were talking about, mandatory vacation and everything like that. Does that include the cat ladies that JD Vance is against or not?
100%. I say this all the time. I'm like, look, I wanted to make an office joke because, Angela had like 45 cats or something like that. I don't know if you guys are Office fans, but I am.
I am.
But yeah, no, I tell one of my best friends, he's a childless dude and he has no intention of having children. He calls it parent privilege a lot of time. And we have a lot of discussions around parent privilege. And I have to explain to him, it's not actually a privilege when your kid is vomiting everywhere. that you just have to take those days off and call out of work. But I tell him all the time, when I say 30 days, I want to make sure that he can go on vacation too, because he has a family, he has friends that he wants to spend time with. And I mean, that's something that I want to see. And also, I think that childless cat ladies, need their time off
Speaking
with
of the
their
childless
kitties, because
cat ladies, real quick, right? Did y'all see the in the DSC when C-SPAN, when Oprah was talking and made the reference to the childless cat lady, and C-SPAN panned out into the crowd and focused on a woman, and the woman was like, "What are you looking at me for?" But then after it was over, it turned out she got interviewed, and it turned out she was a childless cat lady. She had 2 cats and was childless. And now, so Jon Stewart was making the joke, like, C-SPAN knows their shit. They are like researching the hell out of it. Because it's like Oprah said it, and immediately the camera panned to this woman.
That's great.
There was a whole joke here recently, because I also foster animals, specifically cats. And someone was like, Victoria, just grab all your cats and like take a picture, but like Photoshop your kids in and Photoshop your dogs in, and just be like crazy people for Harris or whatever, because I have so many. I've stopped doing my pitch in my stump speech about like trying to adopt my kitten out, because she got adopted a couple of weekends ago. It drove my campaign manager nuts. He's like, stop talking about this kitten. I'm like, she's getting adopted. And one of my biggest selling points is like, you're going to have a kitten that was fostered by your future congressional member.
Yes.
Isn't that a great story to tell? And I'll come and visit it. And people are like, okay, you're selling it to me.
You got to use the cats at every advantage, especially because they are being targeted right now by JD Vance.
Oh yeah,
100% have to.
That is if he can get out of Ashley Furniture.
Ben,
Rooms to go has this picture up when he walked in.
Hard for me. You know how hard I have to work on watching my mouth and everything, and I really think, Ben, that you set me up for failure. I really do.
I do.
Brett, because I feel that. I got a whole conversation about my mouth and things I can't say when I'm campaigning.
See, and that's why I can't ever
on television, that's for sure. But you can damn sure say it on my radio show.
Exactly. Well,
I got in trouble for saying fuck in a speech. They pulled me aside. They were like, Victoria, you got to read the room, baby. You can't say fuck. And I'm like, but I fucking love it so much.
So, and I would disagree on that point, right? Because what I have seen is that people are sick and tired of the regular suit and tie. Oh, I've got to be this way 100% of the time. Like you're seeing a switch in people, because like people didn't listen to me when I was just like, yes, sir, I'm going to do everything you say, and I'm going to do everything the right way, yada, yada, yada. And before people knew that I had tattoos and everything like that, when I came out and started saying fuck, like people started listening, because people do not, your everyday person does not relate to your, buttoned up businessman. Like we don't relate. Your everyday person doesn't. But you know what your everyday person relates to? Stubbing their toe and saying fuck. Like that's, everybody relates to that, right? So I think, I think we need to see more people just being more genuine, right? Like not just that, but I can go into this whole, like go down a rabbit hole of who even decided that fuck was a bad word and everything like that.
Oh yeah.
But that's the side.
The patriarchy.
Fuck yeah.
It's the patriarchy.
Exactly.
Someone specifically my dad got on to me for my potty mouth, and I was like, I'm gonna need you to stop right there and just take that patriarchy and walk right out the door. I love you, please take it elsewhere. He's like, women don't, nope, out, get out. We don't do that here. It's not acceptable. As the matriarch of the family, no, we're not doing that.
No, exactly. And it's just like I said, we're all people at the end of the day. We're all people. And no matter what facade anybody tries to put on, people can see through the bullshit too. Like everybody and their mama see through Ted Cruz's bullshit. Everybody does. And it don't matter that he's wearing a suit all the damn time. Like we see through it. And we see through it too. Like it hurts me, like
Yeah.
physically, to have to do the whole dressed up thing and everything. And when I first started going to DC and fighting this, I wore suits and everything because I'm like, this is how they're gonna listen to me. Until you just realize, like, I'm not asking anymore. I'm knocking down doors and telling people how I feel.
Look, doesn't Martin Luther King, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like there's a second part of like where he says, you protest peacefully, but sometimes peaceful doesn't work and you have to go the next step. But it's the part of the quote that nobody wants to quote. And it's like, I tried, playing by the rules. I tried doing the voting thing and emailing and calling and using the apps to stay in touch with my congressional candidates and my state party representatives, and it didn't work. And now I'm at the door and I'm saying, you know what? I'm gonna unseat you, and I'm gonna send you home, and we're gonna try something else. Because yeah, I'm a real person. I have tattoos, I have piercings. I'm the type of person who gets tattoos with my coworkers on a work trip, because that's just who I am. But that's real. That's what the average everyday American is. And that's what we need representation of. We don't need a white man in a suit telling us that we can't get an abortion when he's pulling guns on his wife to make her get one and forcing two other mistresses to have them. Like that's not America. It doesn't represent us.
That may represent their America, but that doesn't represent America. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
No, and I say that too, back to the Martin Luther King reference. I say it all the time. Like, when we look back at the civil rights movement, right? Things wouldn't have got changed if it was only the peaceful behind closed doors conversations. So the same as it wouldn't have changed if it was just marches and protests, right? You have to have the two together, right? And that's why it's so funny, because people always come to me and they're like, you're just the angry guy that yells all the time and says fuck. And I'm like, that's only what the media picks up. You don't see all of the meetings that I'm in, talking to the superintendents, talking to these representatives. Y'all don't see all that because it's not newsworthy at that point, right? So you have to do both. You have to, go in, shake hands, have these conversations. The conversations don't work, then you got to make the conversations work any way that you can. And if that is a 10-day sit out outside of a school administration building like I did, then so be it. But we have to make the changes together.
Yeah. And I mean, that is what is going to make the change. The quote that well-behaved women rarely make history sits in my mind as a child. It stuck with me. And, I was out, there's another candidate that I'm running with that go out canvassing together, but he said something really interesting. He was like, it was so funny. You were giving this speech, he was listening to me, and he was like, you were being so fun and friendly, but then you got to the serious points and you squared your shoulders, and it was like a knight, and you commanded the room. And he was like a man. And he's like, I realized that I can't understand what it's like to be a woman, because you had to change to be taken seriously. You knew that without even, and I was like, you're right. I mean, I was always acutely aware of being the woman in the room. And we've watched it in Matt's lives. I am a blonde haired woman running for office. By default, no one wants to take me seriously. And when I square my shoulders and I square up, they realize that I'm not afraid, and I look them dead in the eyes, and it's jarring because they want a meek woman, and I'm not that.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
I'm kind of terrifying. I mean, my brother is 6'2". He stole all my height in the womb. I always joke with it. But people said, no one was really afraid of him because he was a teddy bear, but they were definitely afraid of me because they knew
Listen,
I'm fun size and feisty.
The women in my life are always the biggest fighters and the terrifying ones. Like, I know the way I look and everything, and I know how loud I am and aggressive I come off and everything like that. But my wife runs shit. Straight up. She runs shit. And I ain't fighting that. You know what I'm saying? But you have to be, right? Like women have to be, because y'all were treated like second class citizens. Still to this day, your bodies are up for regulations, and it makes no sense to me. I've always proposed that we should just make men get vasectomies. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't shoot the gun without the bullets, right?
exactly. hmm And I
But
mean,
because
we're at this point where we're having that conversation when really I just want to be able to make decisions. I want to go to my doctor's office and I don't need a politician or someone with different beliefs than me. When I leave my house at the end of the day, I know that there are going to be multiple people that I'm going to encounter. They're going to have different beliefs with me. They're going to look different than me. They're going to worship different than me. And I understand that we can all coexist because that's what it is. If I see someone out and they're praying or they want to talk about God, it might bother me, but that's their right. At the same side of that, it's my right to be able to make those decisions outside of, their religion, outside of what they think. It's like, you think it's that, that's great. That's great for you. Let that guide your life. I don't need that in my life. That's not me. That's
yep,
not what I want. And I want the difference between myself and the other side is I want to protect your rights because I realize they might look different than me. The other side wants my rights to look like they think they should. And that's not freedom.
right. So yeah, exactly. And so they're fighting for you to be able to you know, pull a gun out on your spouse and force them to change their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still shocked over that, dude. Like, yeah, I'm gonna say it as much as I can, and I think I'm gonna have an open campaign like just against him, because that is such bullshit.
I mean, and he's an elected official, and this came out like probably in 2013 or 14. I mean, you had only been in office for a couple of years at that point. I can't remember the exact date. And like, this has been our person since I left high school. Like, he has been in office since I left high school. Like, I graduated in 2011. He was elected in 2012. So 1 year later, he's in office. Like, make that make sense. This is a known story. He's not liked within our district. He says things and he doesn't come out. Like, he's only just now started putting out campaign signs. And even my constituents have noticed that. Every place that I leave in my county that goes to one of the counties that I represent has his sign, a big sign. Who
Mhm.
is this dude? He only goes to friendly events. He only comes down when it's a friendly event that it's like opening in a park, to celebrate the Civil War or whatever. That's the only time he comes out. Other than that, he won't debate me. He won't come out and debate. He hasn't debated any of the other people. He sends his like little help staff or whatever. He doesn't man his offices unless he's paying someone and they keep the doors locked. Like
I
this are
I think it's so crazy. Like, so he's flat out just said, no, I won't debate.
Yeah, he won't come out. He won't debate anyone.
So we're gonna have to get together, and I'll do a tweet or a video and really push that out there and be like, is this who you want? Like, and that leads me to another question, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
reading this Wikipedia as we were doing this. Is he still legally able to own his weapons?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Like,
sure.
seeing that's
Yeah,
wild. That's
yeah.
that. Ben, what are those stats again?
For which part?
Domestic violence and firearms.
So 50 women killed every month. 1 million women have been shot at or shot, and roughly 4 million women have been threatened to be shot.
And so like we have there was the boyfriend loophole here for a while,
Mhm.
right? Like it just got overturned. But Tennessee, does it have it? Like,
Well,
I think that they do have that. I think
the
that's one
Safer
of the ones.
Communities Act closed it. So in
okay.
2021, the Safer Communities, because that's what that Supreme Court case was really calling forth, is that because for those of the listeners that don't know, the boyfriend loophole said that if you committed domestic violence but you didn't live with your partner or weren't currently married to your partner, you did not have to surrender firearms. And 19 states, including Texas, Florida, and I think Tennessee was one at the time, had that loophole, but Marco Rubio's bill, the Safer Communities Act, actually closed that loophole. And so the Supreme Court went forward because this guy who had like assaulted his partner multiple times, had his guns taken away because of that, was like his due process had been stolen because he wasn't actually charged with, he wasn't convicted of a crime. He was only charged with a crime. So he was arguing that his gun rights were being violated. His due process was being violated by them taking the guns from him before convicting him of a crime. And the Supreme Court surprised me by upholding the domestic violence resolution, which is a really, which says a lot, right? When they do something that I agree with, and that's what surprises me.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, and I worked in apartment management for a while, and I remember one of the like most jarring things was we had a domestic violence situation at the apartment complex. Actually two. The first one was at the location I worked at where the couple were fighting. The neighbors started calling the office. We called the police. The police showed up, and that was when I was first ever informed or realized that the reason they would detain both parties is because the person most likely to turn on the police officer is the spouse who's having the domestic violence against them. Like they were screaming, yelling, it was escalating. I don't remember all the nuance of it, but the police had to detain both of them to make sure that potentially she wouldn't come after them when she realized he was getting taken away. And basically they just sent him away for the day, or the evening or whatever. And then, it fizzled out and they ended up not staying at the apartment much longer. But then there was another situation, another apartment complex that was in our same thing where one of my good friends, she was basically the manager of the property when someone got shot. The spouse came home and killed his wife. And but it was known in Nashville, Tennessee. It happened. And I remember being on the phone with her. She was like, can you just be on the phone while I have to walk through this open crime scene? Because they have a cat and we have to make sure that, that it's not, she gave me all these lists of reasons, but I remember her calling us while it was happening, like the police showing up. Like, that is an insane situation to experience as an outsider, and yeah, I mean, it was just, I think about that sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is normal. And he came home and just did this thing. Like,
Yeah. Well, and that's,
go ahead, Ben. How law enforcement even like responds to those typically, right? Like they call in domestic situations and they just don't get involved. And that's why so many women end up killed.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's making me just think about this. I can't pronounce his last name. The dude that you're running against, he's pulled he's pulled a gun on his wife, and he's still allowed to have guns, and he is an elected person,
official.
Yeah. How crazy is that as a society that is overlooked? Like you said, the mistresses, the being against abortion and having abortions, you can overlook a lot of that other stuff. But he pulled his gun on his wife, and he was elected. Like that is just, it should be a fucking no-brainer.
And he's an elected official, and he's against abortion because that's like, and he's a doctor. He's taken an oath to do no harm, and he's doing the exact opposite of that. Not only has he harmed his wife, he's harmed his spouses with his rhetoric and doing it. He's harmed every woman in the country by voting to overturn abortion, something that he used with his spouse and his partners when he didn't want to be a father again. Make sense. Because like we can talk about all of it at the end of the day, but this dude is morally bankrupt.
Oh yeah.
And we've made this conscious choice to elect him. There are people that I know today who are still going to vote for him because they don't agree with my policies. They know me as a person and have literally told, well, you're not good enough. You don't have enough experience. I tell them those stories and they're like, well, he's a Republican, so I'm going to vote for him. And I'm like, you just told me everything I need to know about you.
And exactly. And this is why, I say this too. I don't vote for just me. I vote for my wife. I vote for my kids. I vote for my LGBTQ friends. I vote for my BIPOC friends. I vote for everybody but me, because at the end of the day, you look at the social hierarchy that is still here. We're at the top. White men are at the top of the fucking totem pole and everything. So I don't vote for me. No matter what happens, for the most part, me personally, I'll be okay. But my wife might not be, my children might not be, my LGBTQ, my BIPOC friends, they might not be. So that is why I vote for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Because, and that's how it should be. Like I say it all the time, like we're only as good as our people that are in the most need. As we're only as strong as our weakest, we're only as strong as our poorest, and we need to bring everybody up. You don't have to tear people down to bring yourself up when everybody can rise together.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we shouldn't live in a country where it's a state of fear. We shouldn't live in a country that has an urban dictionary word to define what it is to be an American afraid of guns, which is a fear con. America is a bad place on TikTok, is what illuminated me on this. And he talks a lot about different things, but that's one thing. And he started one of his videos with a situation where there's just a pop going off, and Americans in the room immediately they do the tense, we tense up, and I do it.
Yeah.
I realized when I leave the country, it goes away. I realize I'm safer. I'm less likely to experience violence. I can walk around a city and feel fine. I can go out with my kids, and if I hear a pop, I know that it's a car backfiring or a balloon popping or some sort of celebration. It's not a gun. And that is a hard pill to swallow, because myself being as intelligent and as traveled and whatnot that I am, I realize that so many Americans live in that constant fear, and we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have a word to describe it. And
Exactly.
yeah, it has to be better.
Exactly. And so, we're closing out the show. We've got about 9 minutes left. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to say to everybody watching or listening or going to see this tomorrow or whenever it's out?
Yeah, we've had a great conversation, Brett, and then I appreciate you guys so much for having me. I appreciate connecting with you both and learning from both of you. I am going to continue doing that for as long as I'm in this game, but I'm going to do it when I'm in office. But I do want to tell you all that if you're listening, you can change this. I know that a lot of us feel hopeless. We're feeling more hopeful after the DNC, after this ticket switch, having Biden do the most patriotic thing that I can think of by taking his ego out of the game and realizing what the United States citizens needed. We have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who are both just amazing people. And I think that we're going to see some really great things from them. And we shouldn't count them out. But if you want to feel like you're helping today, please get involved. Please get out and vote. That's going to be the biggest change that you can make. Please take 3 friends to the polls. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I would love your money, but I would love it so much more if you would take 3 people to the polls, because even if I don't win my election, that means that someone else will, because your state elections come down to digits. It's not that big of a race. Federal elections, we think of the presidential race, we think of the congressional races, but we don't ever think about those state and local elections. And your vote truly matters. And if you want to see change, we have to give a playing field that has a full team. We can't have half a team. We can't have a quarter of a team. We have to have a full team to make these changes and make it better for everyone. So please get out and vote. Please, if you would love to support me, you can find me at Victoria4 Tennessee.org or .com. Again, that's Victoria4 Tennessee.org or .com. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. Please come out, support me, whether it's just sending me some money, I will write you a personal thank you card if you donate to that. That's one thing that I love to do. I write them all day long, even while I'm working. But if you can't do that, share the information, interact with our videos, because every candidate needs your help this year, because not all of us have that big support system, but we can make this change, and you are worth it. And I want to see that change. So that's my pitch. And I say on TikTok always, stay hydrated and vote blue.
That is perfect. And I am gonna, my final thoughts and everything. And I pretty much said it earlier. You have to vote for the people around you. Like I said, most things won't bother me, like personally. It won't affect me, but it affects my wife, my daughters, my sons even. It affects my LGBTQ friends and family. It affects my BIPOC friends and family. This vote is so important because it is about bringing rights back to women. It is about funding our education. It is about bettering us as a people and as a society and as a nation, because everything else be damned, right? And actually, that's it.
All right. Well, okay. So for my final thoughts, I think it's important that, as we're moving into this elections season, that we continually not take the high road. I don't think we should. I don't think we should take the high road, or, because being morally, upright isn't going to win an election, right? And because the Republicans are not going to play by that rule. I think that's why they're struggling so much right now, like across the board, because so many now on the left have just said, fuck it, we're going to play the game the same way, right? Thinking about
say fuck.
Where Barack Obama,
they fucking hate it.
He's concerned with crowd sizes,
That was so beautiful.
That was amazing. So like in your race, I would harp on the fact that he's a anti-abortionist that's constantly getting people to get abortions, right? To kind of point out that hypocrisy and really like scream at the the evangelical sect that would normally support him, to maybe convince them not to maybe do so.
Or make them defend him. That's what they say. Make them defend him. If they have to defend it, it's harder to defend him.
Exactly. But we do need to get more people in office that are going to do something to keep our children alive, right? And not just that, right? We talked about last week, the topic was suicide, right? We need to reduce all gun deaths, whether it's homicide, suicide, mass shooting, accidental death. But we can't do that in the current status quo. We can't do that with the current politicians. And so that's where I'm going to land my plane. And so I want to thank everybody for coming onto the show. I want to thank all of our listeners. We'll be back next week on Monday again with another story from the Cold Dead Hands. Perhaps we will finally reach a day where there will be no more stories to tell. But until then, signing off.
This has been Stories from the Cold Dead Hands with Dr. Benjamin Dowd-Arrow and Brett Cross. Hopefully one day we will not have any stories to tell. But until that day arrives, remember to love one another and be kind to each other. Until next week, signing off.